Okay, now that we reviewed what constraints might look like, this is how we're going to use it. So if you look at this example here, find the values of the 6 trig functions using theta, but also using the constraint. So cosine, we know, is ca. We also see that this is positive, so we have a positive cosine. So when are our values of x positive? And it says sine is less than 0, so when is sine negative? Well, that are our y values. So when is x positive? In quadrants 1 and 4. When is y negative or sine negative? In quadrants 3 and 4. So this quadrant is where we're going to draw our reference triangle now. So I'm going to draw my triangle. Remember, theta always comes out of the origin. Cosine is ca, so our adjacent is 3. Our hypotenuse is 5. A squared plus b squared equals c squared, or this is one of those you should have memorized by now, where b squared, or b is 5. Just kidding, 4. So much for memorizing it, right? Now, here's the problem. If I put 4 right here, what do you think the most common mistake is going to be? It's going down 4, so we have to remember to make it a negative 4. So now, if I label the sides of my triangle, this is my adjacent, opposite, and hypotenuse. Sine is opposite over hypotenuse, cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse, tangent is opposite over adjacent, cosecant is the reciprocal, secant is the reciprocal, and cotangent is the reciprocal. So the 6 trig functions. Okay, so let's try this next one here. What do we know? We know that cosecant is the same as sine's reciprocal, so it makes more sense to me to change this into sine. Tangent is greater than 0, so tangent is positive. Well, tangent is positive in quadrants 1 and 3. Sine is negative in quadrants 3 and 4. So we are working out of quadrant 3. So now I can build my reference triangle. Sine is opposite over hypotenuse. So one of these numbers is going to be negative, and one of them is going to be positive. Which one is negative? Well, the 1 is, because 3 can never be negative because it's our hypotenuse. A squared plus b squared equals c squared. And we have 1 plus b squared equals 9, or b squared equals 8, or b equals the square root of 8. But remember, we're going to rationalize, or not rationalize, but simplify this into the square root of 4 times the square root of 2, or 2 square roots of 2. Now, what kind of a 2 square roots of 2 is this? It's going to the left, so it's negative. So these are the little twists now that are going to be new to today, okay? So now my sine is opposite over hypotenuse. My cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse. My tangent is opposite over adjacent. So we have some cleaning up here to do for the tangent. First of all, negative divided by negative is positive, and I need to multiply the top and bottom by the square root of 2. Negative 1 times the square root of 2 is negative 1 square root of 2. Square root of 2 times the square root of 2 is the square root of 4, which is 2, and 2 times 2 is negative 4. But again, we said a negative divided by a negative is positive. The cosecant is negative 3. The secant is 3 over negative 2 square roots of 2. Again, I have to rationalize top and bottom by the square root of 2. and we get 3 square roots of 2 over negative 4. I am not going to flip this one for cotangent because then I'll have to rationalize again. So I'm going to go back to this one, which was negative 2 square roots of 2 over negative 1, and a negative divided by a negative is positive. Okay. So try this one on your own, and then we will move forward. The secant of theta is undefined, and the constraints are that theta lies between 0 and pi. See if you can tell on the unit circle where I am. Well, I know that the secant of theta is the same as 1 over cosine, or that doesn't help me really right now, so I'm going to use my constraint. My constraint is telling me I'm between 0 pi and 1 pi. Okay, so now if you think about how do I get an undefined means that I have to have a number over 0 spelling no, right? So if you think about if the secant is undefined, that is taking the reciprocal of sine. So I am actually using this point right here, 0, 1. Because cosine is 0, secant is 1 over 0, which is undefined. So I was able to kind of work backwards. I'm not able to draw a triangle, but that's okay because we have an x and a y value here. So my sine is my y value, or 1. My cosine is 0. My tangent is y over x, which is also undefined. My cosecant is the reciprocal of 1, which is still 1. Secant we said was undefined. And cotangent then is 0 over 1, or 0. So those are when it gets a little bit more difficult. So I would kind of work backwards and graph and find where you are on the unit circle first, and then make that work.